Good morning again on Wednesday, January 7th, 2026, here in House Transportation Committee. We have a returning witness and guest that visits us every year, at least once, if not twice or more. Dan DeLabrie with the Vermont, or the Agency of Transportation, Director of Rail. Is it rail and aviation?
No,
it's just rail.
we separate.
Updated titles here.
Yeah, we separated aviation.
Robinson is the Director of Aviation, and Dan is fully focused on rail. And when he's not running the whole thing, he's out fixing the last of the line to get the Amtrak to Montreal.
All of that, yes.
And Bennington to.
And then, most importantly, yeah.
Oh, more importantly, yes, of course. An old, for those of you who haven't been on the committee for the last 25 years and are going to be on the committee for the next 25 years, waiting for the Montreal and Bennington first priority projects to move forward. That's a terrible way to introduce. Can we cut all that? No, sorry. And I know you have an annual report and some pieces to present to us, and I appreciate you adjusting your schedule and being patient with us. And I will hand it over to you and help us check off some of the lists of things we have to hear about, need to hear about.
Great. Well, thanks for having me in.
If the conversation goes elsewhere in the rail, I'm happy to do that too.
And off the rail.
Off the rails. Yeah, we don't like to say that. Yeah. So yeah, thank you for having me in. So I was asked to do a legislative report, which was due in December, regarding the revenue that we create or generate on the railroad right-of-way property that the state of Vermont owns. So we have 4 active railroads, 4 rail trail properties. Obviously, the main purpose of the active rail is railroad operations, either freight or passenger. But there are times where there may be some excess property that we may be able to lease to an abutter, or utility crossings, driveway crossings, things like that. All of those things, we generate agreements with folks. Those agreements generally come with a fee. Those fees come into AOT and come into the T fund. So we were asked, what is that? How much is that? Specifically, I was asked to focus on either telephone communications or broadband communications. And then sort of the third category was everything else. So in the report, and I don't know if everybody saw the report.
Is it posted on our webpage or is it on the, I know it came out as an email.
I don't know where you posted. I gave it to the person who sends all our reports in for AOT, and they sent it to you guys. I don't know where you posted it. I do have it right here in paper form, and there is a math error in the one that I sent in. So I am going to be sending a corrected version because one of the totals is incorrect. When we did the spreadsheet, when you do sum total, you have to highlight. Well, there was a portion of it that didn't get highlighted. So this total is off by $50,000 actually. But I have enough copy. I can send, if you guys want to see a paper copy. Normally you guys don't like paper, so I didn't just pass them out because
I'm looking to see if it's posted on our website. It's in here. Act 143 report.
That sounds right.
Is that it?
That sounds right.
Act 43
I don't know the
railroad.
yeah, railroad.
Okay,
It's on reports.
yeah.
Right at the bottom.
Oh,
It's from December 15th. It was.
Yes, that's correct. That's the correct date.
resources on the page,
Okay, it's right here.
So under the active railroad.
but I would love the copy if you want to see.
Yeah, absolutely. We could, yeah, send them around. If you guys want a paper, take one if you want and don't take one if you don't want. I know you guys don't like paper, so I just didn't.
Some people don't.
Some people don't.
I like loggers, they got work to do too.
So there's plenty there for everybody. And the corrected total is on there. So what you have in front of you is the correct number. All right, so let's get into specifics. So for years and years and years, we had telephone companies that were strictly telephone. Over the, I'm going to say last 5 or 10 years, a lot of the telephone companies are now also providing broadband. So the category under telephone, that number has shrunk. The category under broadband has gone up. So in the report, on number 2, on the original, total was 148,311. That's an incorrect number. The corrected total is 199,888. So that includes, revenue generated by, companies that provide a broadband service that have wires in our railroad right away. So that's what that is. And then the third total is sort of everything else. So that's like power companies, it's, driveway crossings, it's if you lease a little bit of land, so there are some cases where businesses actually come onto our property for like a parking lot or something like that, and we will lease them some land. That's kind of examples of what the third category would be. So I think the question that started this conversation, why they wanted this report, was they were looking for this. I think this sort of was generated from the Senate side, I think, but I don't think it came from you guys, but
No, they were upset, a particular senator was upset with, the prior legislation from the year before, taking us out of the loop when we approved, leases. We used to have some oversight on that, they didn't like that.
Okay.
So it sort of evolved for us to say, all right, what's out there? Should we have a seat at the table before these leases are signed?
sure.
So I think my recollection.
That part was discussed but there also is, well, every report out of Act 43 was requested by the Senate. I like to make that very clear. As often you will hear that over and over again. I'd love to say that to our agency friends, to make sure that they know where the work came from. But there is a lease issue that was discussed in conference. There is a sort of let me make sure I characterize it the right way. It's a significant asset the state owns that goes through a significant portion of 304 miles of active railroad party, and another 140 miles that crisscross the state. And in fairness to the people that are pushing for this direction, is it or is it not perhaps an opportunities? Is it used? How is it used? How does it generate revenue? Does it not? Is it appropriate? Those are questions they're looking to get into. This was a goal to find some data for them to help with that conversation.
Right.
Whether increasing those fees or adding fees or opportunities, that's another is part of that discussion, but that's part of what drove this request. And I would say that I would speak in the limited piece that I investigated into it. Positions that were shared is that it has been the policy of the state of Vermont for decades that we wanted broadband access, internet access, cell phone access for the rural for as least expensively as possible. We put a lot of money into it as a legislature, and if anything had been done on fees and related to that area, it would have made that more expensive. So across multiple administrations, both parties, the policy was to not pursue a lot of these activities or these fees or potential fees or additional charges. But however, that doesn't mean that now we have a situation where somebody's asking for a lot more information about what goes on in the right of ways. This is particularly rail focused. So I'm just trying to provide a little bit of context around sort of what drove us to this spot. And I think that there is some effort both in the House and in the Senate to dig further. And this was an attempt to give them information
Right.
that might or might not take the legislature in different directions. So that
That frames it pretty well. And just also for your just so you know, I mean, I came from Senate to here with this same discussion. So I had this discussion about an hour ago in Senate. I will also give you some questions that came up in that committee, so you're aware of some of the stuff. One of the questions was, when's the last time the rates were reviewed and adjusted? So there's on our website, VTrans, if you go to rail under property management, there's a rate sheet that is on our website. And it explains, like, if you put a power pole in the railroad right away, it's X amount of dollars. If you put a longitudinal wire, whatever, half mile or whatever it is, it's X amount per foot. If you just cross over, it's X amount per wire every single time. And that rate for communications and power, that rate hasn't changed since 2004. What has changed on that rate sheet is when we do a excess property lease, like if say there was a parking lot or something, or somebody wanted to use a piece of land that the railroad wasn't using and we wanted to give them a lease, that was updated in 2024. And how that was updated was AOT has an appraisal division that knows how much property. Tim, you know, appraisals, that's what they do. They update them quite often. So in 2024, we looked at all the towns that had railroad property in it, and we have a rate sheet per town on that website, which shows if you X amount of square footage, a price per square footage, if you wanted to lease, if it was available to lease excess railroad property. So the utility side hasn't been updated since 2004, but the land appraisal value was updated in 2024. So that was a question that was asked to me this morning. I figured I would just offer that up on timing. I figured you guys would have that same question. But yeah, I think multiple administrations have had that same sort of, let's get broadband throughout the state. Let's, not sort of create more hurdles for them to do that. We haven't really had any specific conversations at AOT whether we should be updating rates or not. It just hasn't happened. So there's no like directive that said, don't update rates or do update rates. We just really haven't had the discussion of it. So I don't know. That's basically what's in this report. It's broken down by phone, broadband, and then everything else. And everything else would be, like I said, water, sewer, power, because electrical companies don't generally provide broadband or phone service. So that's in the other category. But I'm happy to answer anything else you have about this report.
Is there, as far as the utility sort of leases or is there a lot of activity? Is there like all of a sudden somebody's looking to run 20 miles of communication or power along the
So we have
right way?
We have a fair amount of like one-offs where someone wants to just put another power line across or something like that. We don't have a lot of sort of longitudinal, like long miles of run. We did have, there was a fiber optic company about 2 or 3 years ago that wanted to run from Rutland down through the Green Mountain Railroad corridor towards Bellows Falls. And we worked with them, and I don't believe that's been installed yet, but I believe we have an agreement. And I'm not 100% sure where we are on that, but I know we worked with a company. That was sort of the last big longitudinal occupation for fiber optics. But no, it doesn't. You're right. It generally doesn't happen where someone's looking to go end to end.
It's just sort of one-offs, crossings, and
Yeah, and obviously each one of these utilities isn't in every town, so they're focused on where they actually are. They're not. If say that's a utility company that's in Bennington, they're not looking to add a wire, up in Burlington. It's wherever they are. So, yeah.
Is there a difference on that sort of what you cross and versus longitudinal versus latitude? Well, we heard testimony in the past that when it comes to the national rail issues and rules, that running something along the rail is very different than crossing it. Is that true, or is that where am I remembering that from?
Well, so you might have an apples and oranges situation here, because if you're typically just going to cross over, 99% of the time it's area, right? It's just over the top. It's just running over the top. If you're going end to end, then you're generally burying it somewhere along the line. Which, if you're a railroad, you're looking at, am I ever going to need that where it is? Because once you put fiber optics on there, you're typically not going to build something on top, right? So there are more rules when you start burying things, and more restrictions as far as how a railroad's going to be able to operate in the future. So some restrictions do apply, starting to bury stuff. And there's something called a REMA, which is an engineering standard for railroads where you have to typically put things in metal casings so it can take a pounding, because that's what railroads kind of do. There's a lot of weight there. So typically, the ones that cross over are in the air. Along, up and down, they're on the ground.
Representative Brown?
Yeah, this is really interesting. I'm kind of thinking ahead to the CHIP Act that we just passed. And, one of the things that we have over 200 unsewered villages in Vermont. And I'm kind of ahead thinking like, how does that overlay with where rails are, and trying to bring, wastewater, probably community wastewater to these locations, and do the railroads right of ways? How does all this sort of talk to each other? And that would probably, obviously there would be crossing, perpendicular, but also potentially a parallel line. And I'm wondering if you guys have thought about that, or if there might be some kind of opportunity to think about it and consider it and develop maybe some sort of an MOU for this is how this works, just so we can, get that investment forward as quickly as possible.
So to be clear, we at V-Trans aren't out like saying, hey, come put your stuff in here. We're more reactionary, where they'll say, can we come and put your stuff in there? So we're not out knocking on doors saying, like sewer lines, we're not saying to these two towns, hey, you guys want to connect?
Yeah.
But if they came to us, we would definitely look at it.
Okay.
And we would look at what's the proper engineering standard that they would have to meet, is first of all. Second of all, well, I guess first of all is, does the railroad, are they okay with it? Because once you put a sewer line in, right, then they can't put a train on top of it, typically running the whole length. So
Yep. And how long are the right of ways typically? Does that change?
it does, it's not standard. It varies. It goes in and out. One of the things on that report, there's a link on that report, and that's accurate. So if you wanted to see, it's not, just to be clear, it's not survey grade, but it's pretty close. We did a GIS sort of overlay layer. That gets you pretty close, a couple feet probably. So if you wanted to see where the railroad right of way is, and it goes in and out. So if you wanted to zoom in on a certain area, you could see there's kind of a blue outline where the railroad our railroad property is. So you could see where it goes and how wide it is. But no, there is no standard. It's not always 33 feet or 66 feet, or it's not always that.
Okay. Right. Well, it may be something that you guys might want to think about at some point.
Yeah, I mean, we have requests all the time,
Yeah.
and we look at them one by one to see if it can fit in there. Certain utility companies are our number one sort of customer, I guess, if you would say, because they need to cross. They just need to go over. We're like you said, Chairman said, we go end to end, and people need to get from one side to the other. So we're kind of in the way sometimes.
Thank you.
So that's essentially what the report said. Like I said, our utility rates are, I would say, less than for state-owned property. I'm not going to be exact here, but we're approximately, half of what a private railroad would be. Like if New England Central, for instance, is also in Vermont, they would charge more than what we charge. But we're a state-owned asset, so, we have a simple, for instance, documentation fee of like $300. Their document, I know their document, I don't know their numbers exactly, but I know their documentation fee is quite a bit higher than ours. Their annual fee would be higher than ours. But again, we're state-owned property, so we're less.
So if you want to run one of these things, you pay an application fee on this dock fee, or the dock fees in?
So for state of Vermont, we basically have a dock fee. There's no like
First time, one time, or?
time dock fee, unless you amend your agreement, Then we have another, because we had to run it through our attorneys and, it's time for us. So if you, either the initial agreement or an amendment, there's a dock fee. That's it. And then, I will say this, on these land leases, there's typically a CPI adjustment every 5 years. So if you have a 20-year agreement, every 5 years, we look at what's the rate, compare it to CPI, and we adjust it for that. So that's would be the only increase.
Representative White?
Just following up on Representative Lally's point. From what I am understanding, from what you're saying, active rail lines, not a great place to put underground conduit because it conflicts with active rails.
It depends, but the answer, we look at it, each one individually.
But the rail trails, different scenario?
Yeah,
Because
sure.
You put a septic, line underneath that, maybe they have to dig it up, but they're digging up pavement, they may be paved or maybe dirt,
Yeah, so,
rail trail.
okay. Different, but the same. And when I say different, but the same, so there is no track right on the rail trails, so constructability is a lot easier. However, same ARIMA standards, same engineering standards, because when we rail bank a property, these rail trails, for instance, we go in and we sign the paper that says railroads can come back there tomorrow. If they wanted to come back tomorrow, they can come back tomorrow. So we don't want to build all this infrastructure that won't hold up a train.
One day.
Right, exactly. I know. I know that's unrealistic,
I
but
know, it's funny what I just think of that. They could do it tomorrow, but we can't make anything build or happen. Tomorrow. But we can hear this doom and gloom idea that they would come back tomorrow. I don't mean it, I'm not picking on you, but we all do that. Like,
yeah.
this could happen. Yes, it could, but it also takes 100 years for things to change. Not 100, but it takes a long time for things to change.
Right, but what you don't,
Definitely, where the reminder is, if rail became the thing, they could always take and change that trail back.
yeah, so what you don't want to do is put a sewer line, say end to end, that doesn't meet the ARIMA standards, and say on the day you want to put a train or whenever that happens,
Yeah.
say, wow, now we got to put in, millions of dollars upgrading the sewer line because it won't hold a train how we designed it initially. So when they do ask for that kind of utility in the right of way of the rail trail, we still look at the ARIMA standards.
And I would imagine those are, as you said, standards so that a heavy train would be running on top and everything below. So I would imagine that those standards are pretty stringent and probably expensive to.
There's definitely, it's a higher standard than, trains weigh a lot.
Do you ever see, would we ever say, for example, Lamoille Valley Rail Trail, it's gonna be a permanent rail trail. We want to put a sewer line under there for these two towns. And we're gonna kind of abandon the future opportunity to put a railroad there, just like hypothetically.
Slippery slope, because the federal rail banking, basically what federal rail banking is it says, so 150 years ago, we created this corridor. When the railroads created that corridor, they either bought or took property to create that from somebody 150, 200 years ago. When you say, so railroads have a different sort of set of rules that create the ability to create that corridor. Once you say it's never going to be a railroad again, a lot of those rules go away and some of those property rights change automatically as soon as it's not rail banked. So if you say it's always going to be a rail trail forever, that changes the legal status of those parcels.
Representative Gordon, is-
So anecdotally, I remember several years back, Rutland City, Park Street, the water or sewer line broke and they had to go under the rail.
Right.
But Park Street ran perpendicular to it. So I know it was a heavy lift to get that done. Because there was a lot of.
That was yeah, so not to get into the weeds too much on that one, but
I mean, just so you know, it is that rail is used heavily. That
yeah,
rail
that's right
line.
next to the rail yard.
Yeah.
So there's trains there all day long.
Yeah. Yep. But they did do it, I think, at the
Yeah,
end. They did
yeah.
go under it, but
Yeah.
it was a.
Yes, yeah, that was a interesting project. And that was, actually, there was I think it was like 2 years. They did something 2 different years in a row there. So, yeah, we worked with the city for
Yep.
a lot of that. So, so there's individual agreements. So, there's, like I said, 4 different roads, 4 different rail trails. So if you're Comcast and you have something on every one, you've got 4 different agreements, right? So we have, the way we have it set up is per either railroad or rail line. So you may be like Comcast or somebody like that and have 4 different agreements with us. So anyway, but they're all the same like if you want, like, again, if you go on our website, there's a fee schedule that shows how much is a pole, how much is a wire, how much is a guy wire, how much is a crossing, what's the documentation fee, all of that, it's on on our website. So,
How about in the world of, rail doesn't move as fast, anything in the 6 months, since we've been last year, 7 months since we were last here, or any other interesting pieces going on in the side of things that we'll hear about when your budget, you can't get ahead of the budget.
yeah, I can't talk about numbers.
Or about anything, accomplishments or activities that have happened in the last 6, 7 months and.
So you mentioned Montreal. We are still working on that. I know, well, here's what has changed. The political environment with our 2 countries talking to each other, to be polite. It's not the same as it was a year ago in these conversations. It's still happening. We are moving slower. We're still having our monthly meetings. But we have not made a ton of progress, I'll be honest. In the last 6 or 8 months. Our next step in Montreal is to literally take a study that was created about a year ago, take that study and convert that into an engineering document that says, okay, this is the concept. This is how you build it. You take that concept, this is how you engineer and build it. I'm talking about specifically the station now and the pre-clearance facility. And then the next step after that will be to take that engineering document and bid it out. Because we have a concept of how much this is going to cost. Until you actually put it in front of a contractor and they bid the project, it's an estimate until you know what the bid document is, the bid amount is. So that's where we are. We were there here about a year ago. We've made very little progress since then on getting that study into an engineering document because it was Quebec that had said, we're going to take the next step. So now we're trying to figure out how we get to the next step.
Dates for that facility.
That's all part of the question, right? So the concept is this, and then once we figure out how much it costs, then we have to sit down and say, you're going to pay X, you're going to pay X, you're going to pay X. Here's the total. You got to figure that out.
And to be frank, this, you sort of alluded to this, is the political situation. The Quebec government is not that willing to.
And I'm not saying they're not, the people that we talk to, we're all the same guys around the table and that hasn't really changed. What has changed is
They're talking to Vermont, we're not talking.
their support. It's still there, but right now, well, put it this way, the next step required money from Quebec. Quebec verbally had said, yeah, we're going to pay for this next step. Well, all of a sudden, budgets got cut and changed. So now we're trying to figure out where does the next step dollars come from? And Quebec isn't saying that they're never going to pay for it. They're just saying it's not in their budget today. That's all. But
I think it would be beneficial to them.
oh yeah,
to
and
move this along.
again, verbally there's support. It's we're just trying to get to the next step. And I just think it's not stopped. It's just slowed. It's just not, we're not moving as fast as we were moving 2 years ago. We were moving pretty good. We got that whole study done. It was going great. And then we got the study, and we need to take that study and make it into an engineering document, and all of a sudden we're struggling to get to that step. That's all. And I think, it's gonna get there. There's still support on both sides.
2009, they said it was gonna be 3 years.
No, I know. I don't know where that 3 years came from, but that didn't come from me.
Well, that was before you, but, it's just sort of, I sort of feel like Bill Oswald.
Yeah.
He's waiting for the Western Corridor to get finished.
We got that. Well, we got that. We got to Burlington.
Maybe.
We got that done.
You should focus on things that are possible, manageable. Maybe Bennington to,
Yeah.
somewhere. maybe-
I just-
We're not dealing with a foreign country and possibly a foreign adversary.
I just finished all those bridges,
There
right?
you go.
From Rutland down there through to Hoosick. We just did all 29 bridges. Those are all, yeah.
Good track.
Well, so there's several steps. So there's the rail that's there is, it's jointed rail. It's old. It's 90 pounds. So we need continuously welded rail. And then we need, more lights gates at some of the public crossings so that we can increase train speeds through there. Hey, bridges number one, right? We got to get the bridges, and then track, and then crossings, and then stations.
Just think someday you'll be able to take the train to Montpelier.
Right.
Hey, we got it to Burlington.
Yeah, so that's interesting. So if you have, what do you call a light gate? If you have, so the things come down. is
Gates,
that-
yeah, lights and
does
gates.
that allow you to go faster through that section?
Yeah,
or-
so there's criteria per crossing, and it depends on so many things. There's a lot that goes into it. It's speed of the train, speed of the vehicles, how many trains, how many vehicles, is there hazmat, are there school buses? How far down can you see the train from each direction as you approach the crossing? All of this stuff goes into our formula that kicks out a score per crossing. And based on that score, whether we need lights, just lights, or whether we need lights and gates, what type of gates? Is it just single? Is it quad gates, meaning all four? There's a lot of things that go into it that we look at when we design a crossing. So, all part of it.
Okay. What was that like?
I have a couple questions. Thank you. First of all, the engineering plan that you're talking about for the Montreal line, is there any estimate on the cost of that?
So there's an estimate. It's, so the next step is probably in US dollars, it's probably $500,000, probably $500,000 to get to the next step. To take the study and convert that into more engineering numbers and drawings. That's the next thing. So about $500,000. That's not exact, but ballpark.
And then when we're talking about some of the Amtrak's, the lines that goes from Burlington, like over to Albany. Like Burlington, Middlebury.
Ethan Allen.
Ethan Allen.
Yeah, so it goes down to Rutland,
Yeah,
and then it goes what's called the CLP. It goes over to New York and then down to Albany.
exactly.
Yes.
So is there any work on speeding that train up? I think that doesn't it like stop for an hour in Rutland and
Really good question, because this past summer, the piece from Rutland over into New York, which the state of Vermont doesn't own, that's called the Clarendon and Pittsburgh. That's actually owned by Vermont Rail Systems.
Okay.
They upgraded, I can't remember the number of miles, but a significant number of miles of that was upgraded to brand new continuously welded rail. We are currently working with, I had this conversation yesterday with the railroad and Amtrak. We are currently working on speeding that train up and taking minutes out of our Ethan Allen run. And we're going to publish a new schedule, I'm going to say in the next couple of months, which is going to take a significant number of minutes out of that train. Yeah,
that's good news.
yeah. And we actually replaced some of it was already continuously welded rail, between Rutland and Burlington that was put in like 25 years ago. We actually upgraded that to new contingency loan. Because it was starting to get worn a little bit. So that was done with Amtrak safety money. It didn't come from us, it came from Amtrak. That Congress put in their budget for safety projects. So that was great. So yeah, so I think I would say in the next couple of months, you're going to see a schedule change on the Ethan Allen.
So this comes from a completely selfish point of view. We use the train all the time, and since the expansion into Burlington, I'm glad it happened. But coming out of Rutland, you now cannot get overnight trains out of New York City because you come in too late. And that means you have to drive to Albany in order to keep on the train. Are we going to get
We're
into New
trying.
York City to 2:30?
Well, I don't know about 2:30.
Well, that's when they go to Chicago.
Yeah, Lakeshore Limited, right? That's Lakeshore Limited, yeah. Yeah, so we are looking at the Lakeshore Limited's connection. I don't know that I can't remember the answer on that. We understand the problem.
Okay, good.
We understand the problem. Yeah.
Thank you.
I just had one more question. So, and apologies, I don't remember, are you also dealing with freight, not just passengers?
Yeah.
So we talked a little bit last session about the incredible, just the differences between freight delivery versus truck delivery, kind of how it's much more efficient on rail, emissions are less, et cetera. Is there anything that we can do? Has anything been done to try to incentivize trucking companies to switch their delivery system from trucking on the road to using our rail lines?
So we work with the railroads very closely. And we have something called a three-way program, and there's also Northern Borders grants, things like that. So to give you an example, an exact example, in Barton, there's a trucking company there that we have worked with. There's been a Northern Borders grant and what called a three-way program where we will pay a third of the cost of a rail siding. The railroad pays a third, and then the trucking company pays a third to add capacity for sidings, things like that. So we can get more freight on the railroad. So more of a bit of a transload issue. The Barton example, so that trucking company started in the Lyndonville yard. We expanded to the point where they outgrew the Lyndonville yard, and now they went to Barton. They are now growing Barton. So we are doing more on the railroad with a trucking company because you're right, they can bring it to Vermont on trains and then they can take it on their trucks shorter. Instead of driving their truck all the way to Boston or all the way to Montreal or wherever they're coming from, they can bring it in on train and then they can do the Vermont portion on a truck. So yeah, we're definitely doing that every day. And there's one in we're working with the railroad in Brattleboro and New England Central for Brattleboro. There's an extra one in Brattleboro right now. There's not a big expansion, but there's a small change in Shelburne possibly. So yeah, we're doing this all over the state.
You think, is there more capacity? Is there more opportunity to have more deliveries on rail versus on trucks on our rail system?
We have capacity.
Yeah.
So if there is a company out there that would like to receive freight rail, we would work with them to figure out how to do it.
And the reason I've been thinking about this, you remember back at maybe 6 months ago when this Amazon was talking about coming into Essex and big public outcry, didn't want the kind of traffic, et cetera. And you're just thinking about Amazon's got a company with a lot of resources. And if we could have said, Amazon, can you truck your, bring their wares on our rail system into Essex Junction's already rail there.
Mhm.
That would decrease significantly the street traffic, the trucking, bringing Amazon wares into Essex. And then from there, whether they use trucks, electric trucks or whatever for kind of the last part of the delivery.
Sure.
But
Yeah, we would have worked with them. I mean, if that was that question never came to us.
exactly. But so I guess my question is like, is there something we can do as legislators to try to encourage kind of out of the thinking like that? So our answer to Amazon is not go away, we don't want you here. Because we know that Vermonters use that service, just like
Yeah.
people, so instead of just saying no, coming up with kind of different ways of thinking about how we could accommodate their business needs, using our rail line to, listen to the public concerns about added traffic, but keeping it on rail to me is keeping some of that off of our roads and protecting our roads. And seems like a better solution than just saying, don't come here.
Yeah, so freight rail is really good at moving things that are big and heavy, right? And or large quantities of whatever.
Yeah.
When you start talking about Amazon, that's like most consumers are like immediate, right? I want it today or I want it tomorrow. Rail's not good at that. It takes us, you're switching in different yards all across the country and it'll take a couple of days to get you here, right? So typically when you're talking about Amazon type deliveries, it's coming in on a plane because they can go from California to here in a day, or we can't do that on a train. Where I'd love to say, yeah, I just don't know that rail and Amazon are the right partners, but rail and fuel oil, rail and lumber, rail and,
Yes.
things, yeah, aggregates, yeah. Those are the railroad commodities that make a lot of sense.
Representative Lowry's up next.
Yeah, I just think this is a really interesting value proposition for our communities that we're struggling to make more walkable and livable. There's, I'm thinking of the model of Disney World, where all of this stuff happens invisibly, right? And they built everything for that. It seems like the rail lines are, I represent Shelburne. We've got the rail line just going right through the village, but we also have these enormous 18-wheelers, the white trucks, we call them, that are bringing natural gas through. And, people are uncomfortable with that. And I was like, well, would you like it on Route 7 or would you like it on the rail? I mean, it's going to come through. That's just reality. And it seems like when I look at the highest and best use of our village Main Street, being a conduit for these enormous trucks seems a very unimaginative, impoverished use of an incredible state asset that could be used to generate an awful lot more grand list value, which, we need in the state desperately, if we could sort of figure out how to get things onto the rail. So maybe afterwards, I'd be interested to talk to you about what little small changes you alluded to.
They're looking to make a siding a little longer into that.
Yeah.
I don't think it's anything, they're not expanding much.
We have a salt shed right now. That is, we're sort of a district level area for salt distribution, but, we wonder if that could be thought of more imaginatively for some other purposes, precisely for the livability questions that we're thinking about right now, so.
No, but I agree with you. I mean, this heavy freight that's on Route 7 or wherever it is in Vermont, it can move on a railroad a lot more efficiently. Yeah. And think about it, one train car, typically, depending on what the commodity is, one single train car is either 3 or 4 tractor trailers.
Yeah.
So if you put 10 train cars together, You know, it's 40 trucks. Off the road.
Just to push that a little further, so are we saying, Representative Lally, like bringing salt in on rail versus truck, or bringing natural gas in on rail versus truck in these areas would be really beneficial?
I think so, to just reduce some of the, I mean, that's an interesting data point, 3 to 4 big 18-wheelers come through the village. If we could have, we have many of them coming through every day, we could have fewer of those, that could be a game changer for us. And I'm kind of wondering about the properties that are that the state owns that are affiliated with the rail, could we be making better use of this if we looked at it more comprehensively? And is there, you have a lot to do, Dan, I'm not suggesting that it's something for you to take on, but I'm just wondering if maybe the policy side of the AOT might sort of, look into this.
So we were-
Interesting question.
We also, our planning section does work with the RPCs around the state on sort of abutting railroad properties, excess property that could be used for additional, railroad sidings or new commercial customers or things like that. Road salt does mainly come in on the rail already. So that's how that generally comes into the state of Vermont already, which is great because that's a heavy commodity and we use a lot of salt. So
the RPCs are
they're tuned into our rail network and what we have for, they often ask us, in their regions, a lot of times, what do you have for excess rail property? So we communicate with them quite often. We have something called Rail Council, which is quarterly. A lot of the RPCs will come to that meeting and learn about what's happening in rail. And then often will reach out to me after and with specific questions. So I think they're fairly tuned into it. So.
Well, this is certainly what Selden, Houghton and Vermont Rail Systems does every day, is to look to
Yeah.
market to where there's additional opportunities, and that is certainly what their goal in growing.
And New England Central, right? So both, not just state owned, but New England Central, we work with them too on the same kind of thing with the RPCs and excess rail property. So we from my desk, it's statewide, even though we are focused a lot more on what we own, but we want rail to grow on all the railroads. Because I agree, it's a much greener way to move heavy freight.
Yeah, it seems like it would align with many of our goals, economic goals, but climate action stuff too, and
Yeah.
coordinate nicely with that.
Okay, I think this is my final question. So, and it's two-part. Do you
Tricky.
see, you've given us examples of commodities that work really well on rail,
Yes.
like granite, like fuel, like salt. Are there other examples that you see out there that are relying on trucks that you think would work well on rail that are not utilizing rail right now?
Apologize, I'm sorry about that. So here's the thing that we also look at, which the problem isn't specific to Vermont, it's sort of New England problem. A transload facility for container traffic. There's a whole bunch of transfer facilities, sort of Massachusetts area, the ports come in there, all these containers come up. There's no sort of intercoastal transload for things that come in a container. We are looking at that. Somewhere, it would be great if there was somewhere in Vermont where things could come in, they come in from China or wherever they come in from, and they come in on these containers and then they get trucked from southern New England into all of New England. Wouldn't it be nice if we could put them off the ship onto a train somewhere more north? Because they have it in Montreal, and they have it sort of Boston area, but there's nothing sort of in the middle. So that would open up different types of things that come in containers, not just like fuel or lumber, things like that. So we are looking at that. We thought we kind of had something an idea started a couple years ago, it didn't work out, but we continue to look at that. But yeah, I think we could, instead of seeing all these trucks that have containers on them, get it a little closer on trains and have, 10 or 12 cars worth of double stack containers coming in instead of 40 or 50 or 60 trucks.
And do you think that, is there something we could do legislative wise, tax incentives, like how do we
So there's,
try to incentivize that type of?
so I just talked about, I just mentioned the word double stack. We do have some restrictions, meaning there are some bridges that are lower that we couldn't get two containers through. So not all of our railroads are double stack capacity. That is one of, it's in our rail plan to eliminate those height restrictions. It's just you can't do it all, right? You gotta pick and choose your priorities, and if we're putting in a new structure, we'll make sure it's double stack. When we did the Middlebury Tunnel, we made sure double stack could go through. So as we work on projects, we make that correction, but there are still some height restrictions, so we can't go everywhere.
Right,
So,
but there's certain areas that have can
Yeah.
accommodate double stack containers.
so up northeast corridor in Island Pond, there's St. Lawrence and Atlantic, goes right through Island Pond. That's a fully double stack route that can come into the northeast corner of Vermont, fully double stack. We could not go up the western corridor. We couldn't go from Bennington to Burlington double stack. There's some restrictions, some other bridges. There's a handful of bridges there. Again, we're working on it. But to answer your question about what else could happen, if we had double stack capacity, we could do container traffic. Was that both parts?
Yes.
Okay. Make sure I had both parts answered.
There's a whole world of international transportation that goes on throughout Vermont, where all the way to St. Albans from New Jersey, you're looking at 400 plus tractor trailers a month that get hauled up from New Jersey all the way to the industrial park in St. Albans. That's coming all from the Far East. You've got a huge amount of containers that come to Montreal on a truck down across the border and then into all areas of Vermont. It happens on a regular basis. The expense and the huge size and then the timing, willing to pay more to get it there faster, et cetera. It's a challenge everywhere. And then making any major changes and investments to building any kind of container yard and things that happen in this state is a huge challenge. But those opportunities are out there, and it is what Vermont Rail Systems and and New England Central, I'm not leaving anybody out, we just happen to put more time with Vermont Rail Systems, they're looking for. And the trip that we took up in the Northeast Kingdom earlier this year, it's amazing the expanse of multiple side rails that they have now in that facility up in
Barton, yeah.
in Barton. As from one, there was a guy there that was telling us about it, he couldn't believe they were putting a side into this one field in Barton, 15 years ago, and now there's 4 or 5 sidings.
Yeah, so there was nothing there. It was just the main line. The main line just passed through. Now there's 3 tracks there now. They're gonna put another one in. Yeah, so like I said, they kind of outgrew the Lindenville yard, moved north. So it's seeing a lot more traffic.
Dan, thank you very much for coming in.
Thanks.
Morning and coming on our morning and updating us on the report that you're required by the Senate to do. And have a great 2026. We'll see you again in New Year's